Nearly a quarter of all deaths involving vehicles at work happen during close maneuvering in situations that may put people or property at risk. Top of maneuvers is reversing, which is responsible for many other accidents that result in injury and cause costly damages to vehicles, equipment, and premises. Almost all fatalities and injuries involve pedestrians, particularly those directly involved in the operation, such as yourselves, the signaler, or banksman. So because of these inherent hazards in reversing, it needs very particular consideration. It sounds simple, but the most effective way of reducing the risk from reversing is to remove the need for it altogether. How do we do this? Well, you could set up one-way systems to give drive-through loading and unloading operations. A very elegant, efficient, and safe way of avoiding reversing, but unfortunately, this is not always practical or even possible. So, reversing maneuvers remain an occupational hazard for many organizations. Reversing areas are often situated in or near loading bays. The designated area should be planned out, clearly marked, and visible to all drivers, pedestrians, and anyone else in the area. The idea is to reduce the potential for vehicles hitting someone as a result of a driver failing to see them when maneuvering. It's essential to restrict or better still eliminate altogether any pedestrians from a designated reversing area. When creating an area for reversing, allowance should be made for the possibility of enlarging or altering in the future. Reversing in areas other than those specifically designated should be prohibited because pedestrians simply do not expect this to be happening. This reversing maneuver is against the one-way system and an exit door is concealed. This is even worse where again reversing against a one-way system is happening. Though they hear the reversing alarm, those smokers don't expect a vehicle to come from that direction. The consequences of uncontrolled reversing. So, what can we use to reduce accidents? Well, radios or mobile phones can be useful to the driver in some situations. For example, telling a control office that a reversing maneuver is about to start. Vehicle mirrors are obviously important but must be kept clean. If cracked, broken, or with beads missing, they should be replaced. But fixed mirrors on buildings can also be used in smaller, more confined areas or corners. We've already heard several times the well-known vehicle reversing alarm, which should be loud and distinct and be heard over background noise, and we have seen earlier how it mustn't be confused with other vehicles. A much more common reversing aid today is the CCTV camera fixed at the rear of the vehicle and displayed on a monitor in the cab. This comes on when the reversing gears is engaged. Similarly, a CCTV system can be installed in the reversing bay with the camera looking at the rear of the vehicle whilst the driver watches on a monitor position at eye level outside the cab. Rather, less expensive are buffers on the end of the loading bay. This can be really useful in confined or restricted spaces and should be fixed in positions where they be visible to the driver and be most effective as a reversing aid. A simple and well-tried aid is the use of reversing guide bars used to indicate a final position just as the bay is approached. Their disadvantage is they can only be effective if their position on the ground relates accurately to the vehicles using them and that individual drivers are aware of this. There is a reversing sensor system fitted to the rear of the vehicles. This makes a high-pitched sound in the cab that increases in frequency as the vehicle moves closer to, say, the loading bay. It reaches this long, continual pitch when the bay is or very close. With some designs, when a vehicle comes close to or touches the obstruction, it can turn off the ignition to prevent a collision. If a driver has none of these aids, they may have no option but to leave the cab to visually check the area behind the vehicle. This puts the driver at risk and can also be unreliable, as someone may walk behind the vehicle after the driver has returned to the cab. A near miss, but of course many organizations employ signalers or banksmen like yourselves to aid the reversing of all vehicles and keep the area clear of pedestrians. You can also reduce the potential congestion that may be caused by several vehicles reversing into the loading area simultaneously. In addition to the mandatory high visibility clothing, you should be distinguished by wearing a different colored jacket to the other staff or banksman or signaler on the back. Very occasionally, two banksmen can be used if the reversing maneuver presents really unusual hazards, but one is in control. Before you can assist the driver, it's normal to explain the features of the depot. Things such as one-way systems, speed restrictions, where pedestrians may be found, the loading and unloading areas, the quality of the road surface, and any blind spots. By the way, a confident and experienced driver may turn down the offer of a banksman's assistance. Company policy may indicate what you do next, but if it's okay, you should stay nearby just in case and tell the driver you'll step in if you spot anything dangerous. Very obviously, you should be appropriately trained and competent to perform the required tasks by using a clear system of signaling that must also be understood by the drivers. So it's vital that all signals are understood by both you and drivers, and this can only be achieved by using set standards. These are shown in the Health and Safety Executive Booklet, Safety Signs and Signals. These are well illustrated and must be followed. The first is the start signal, where both hands are extended horizontally with the palms facing forward. Stop is the usual right arm pointing upwards, again with the palm facing forwards. To show the end of an operation, both hands are brought together at chest height. To move towards you, both arms are bent with the palms facing upwards and the forearms make slow movement towards the body. To move away from you, both arms are bent with the palms facing downwards and the forearms make slow movement away from the body. Fairly obviously, there is a right movement and a left movement. If the movement is to continue, then the signal is repeated until complete. To show a change in horizontal distance, the hands indicate the relevant distance. If there is a danger, then this is the emergency stop. Both arms put upwards with the palms facing forwards. All seems reasonably obvious, so now let's put them together with these two demonstrations. Because you work close to moving vehicles, you are always at risk of serious or fatal injuries. The key rules are to never stand directly behind a reversing vehicle and always find a position that doesn't require you to move backwards. In an ideal world, you would work from the front of the reversing vehicle, but working from the side is a practical compromise. Breaking the rules will inevitably lead to a trapping incident like this, a typical crushing which could have been avoided. So, there must be a safe system of work that ensures you and the driver are using these standard signals and that the driver knows to stop the vehicle immediately if you disappear from view. This can often occur because the vehicle is turning, in which case you should move to a position where you know you can be seen. Once you are both inside of each other again, then the reversing can continue safely with care and concentration. It may seem surprising, but some organizations prohibit the use of banksmen because they just don't have trained staff in the appropriate signals. So in this case, pedestrians are totally prohibited in the reversing areas. So it's either use a banksman or no pedestrians in the reversing area. But pedestrians can still be hit by decoupled trailers or complete units parked on sloping surfaces and rolling silently away because the brakes are not on. Once vehicles have been packed up, you should check with the driver to make sure that the vehicle or trailer have had their brakes fully applied. This excellent additional precaution is to remove the ignition keys and either store near the loading bay or in a key case in the loading bay office. Also of concern finally are the incidences of vehicle driving off before the load has been properly secured, or even worse, when loading or unloading is still happening. You, the banksman, may be in a position to prevent this type of accident occurring by removing the ignition keys, as we've seen earlier, or taking the responsibility of checking on the progress of loading or unloading. When completed, you would then give the driver the keys back and the all clear by a gesture or the use of indicator light.